Greetings, everyone. It's time for your AI update along with SEO, Google Ads, all kinds of stuff. Small businesses, we're talking about them. So stick around. Here we go. All right, so this next one is about, it's a big one. Basically, ChatGPT released its advertising guidelines, so to speak, or it just kind of teased what it's going to do a little bit. And basically it said that if you are going to advertise, they're going to start doing advertisements within ChatGPT on the free and kind of lower end tiers from ChatGPT. So that means that users will start seeing potentially in the future, advertisements for products that when they're kind of asking questions, and it'll kind of steer them into like, suggested products. But there's a big caveat. And the big caveat is you have to spend $1 million or more minimum to advertise on ChatGPT. So if you're a small business, that's probably not going to happen for most all of them. So you're going to have to wait a bit for anything that's ChatGPT. We don't know exactly when that will, come to like us normies, but I would imagine it would probably come in the next, maybe this year. They might let this ride for as long as they can, and then they'll open it up basically if they need money, which might be sooner than later. So we know that Gemini's users have reached multi-billions I believe multi-billions. I'll have to check that data. So the update is that Gemini Pro subscriptions are up nearly 300% year over year. ChatGPT's are up 155. So they both are increasing, but Gemini is gaining substantially. That was one report. Business Insider notes that web traffic for ChatGPT decreased since November, whereas Gemini's increased 28% month over month in December. ChatGPT's decreased 5.6% for similar web. A lot of items have also referenced the code red, the famous kind of code red freak out that Sam Altman had from OpenAI as well. And that was that triggered basically from Gemini and Anthropic gaining ground, and now Gemini has actually gained even more ground. They're not at the level of ChatGPT, but it is growing quite a lot, whereas there's a little bit of shrinkage happening in ChatGPT. So that was a very famous note. If you haven't seen it, just check that out. It was a code red letter that Sam Altman had to all of his staff, basically saying like, code red, like this is super important. And really kind of freaking out about the Gemini reaching 650 million active users, and AI overviews obviously on Google becoming very popular. So that was a very famous kind of freak out that happened in the past. To further maybe add insult to injury, Sam Altman joined forces with Jony Ive not too long ago, and they had a very awkward kind of connective moment as well in video. And you can see these kind of very awkward workplace photos that they have together, which are just sort of weird. And they released this kind of bromance video as well, that they're like, meeting at a coffee shop, and a lot of people commented on it. Very strange kind of dater video almost, like and they're talking about how wonderful it is to be together and how amazing their lives are. So yeah, that was extremely odd. The injury part is that Apple picked Google Gemini to run AI powered Siri, and this is definitely like a punch in the face, I guess, to Jony Ive, who is like Mr. Apple. He was a senior product designer or something like that at Apple, that had made these amazing products, revolutionary products under Steve Jobs, who the successor to Steve Jobs was Tim Cook. He worked with Steve Jobs, and now Jony Ive left, retired I guess for a moment, and then moved to OpenAI now, and is doing some device that is still not released, and we think it's earbuds, but who knows really. And what's fascinating is that Apple actually decided they've kind of been courting and doing like some OpenAI stuff on Apple devices, but now they've officially said from Google, joint statement from Google and Apple, this is January 12th, that they've entered into a multi-year collaboration under which the next generation of Apple foundational models will be based on Google's Gemini models and cloud technology. These models will help power future Apple intelligence features, including more personalized Siri coming this year. This is massive. There was speculation also that in the past, the OpenAI did not pay to even be on Apple devices. You know, you don't really know exactly what's happening. They're not, OpenAI is not a publicly traded company, so you don't actually know like all the financials anyways. But from kind of internal reports and leak things, there has been a lot of struggles happening nowadays with that company, and it is pretty interesting to hear about it. And like I said, it's kind of a kick in the face because Jony Ive has this amazing connection with Apple, and it kind of reminds me of how years and years and years ago, Steve Jobs was famously fired by Apple and the executive board, I think John Scully, he was fired. He was just fired to no longer lead Apple, and he left Apple and started his own company, which was called Next Computer. And its claim to fame was that Tim Berners-Lee used a Next Computer, I believe, to create the internet, basically. It's CERN in 1995, or maybe it's before then, but so that's kind of its claim to fame. But it was a way too expensive computer. It looked cool, but like it was kind of ridiculous. And Apple bought that technology, which now is kind of still used for Mac OS X, and it has been used for like decades. And so its core technology of like Unix and stuff had actually been kind of built around that. And so it's pretty fascinating, because I think Jony Ive was doing the same thing. Like he left Apple, even though he wasn't like technically fired or anything. That's another topic, but basically he left Apple, and then he, you know, was gone for a while, and then he kind of came back with OpenAI. And it's like, maybe this is the same thing. This is Next 2.0, where they were trying to like sell it back to Apple and then have the new technology being built on OpenAI. It seems like the same exact story, but Steve Jobs actually made it happen, whereas Jony Ive and Sam Altman so far have seemed to have failed. Because with this agreement with Apple and Google, that's what they wanted, I think. I mean, this is a multi-year agreement with their AI powering Siri for the next few years. This is exactly what I think they wanted, and they totally missed out on it. So that's a pretty big deal. And yeah, I just had that comment to note. So on that note, that was Gemini being topped as Google's top trending search term in 2025. So a lot of people looking up Gemini for AI use. Before I cover two big topics, which are the Google antitrust case and the TikTok agreement, I wanted to go over Google algorithm updates. Super important for businesses, small businesses, and just kind of SEO in general. So Google had these updates, and they have been relentless on these core updates and spam updates and all kinds of updates for the Google algorithm. And SEOs feel it, and that means businesses feel it. Rankings change. Small business owners might be, you know, pissed off because they're like seeing their rankings go up and down, and it's frustrating. So here's kind of a cool infographic that sort of talks about, or just shows, you know, the core updates that happen from Search Engine Roundtable. So kudos to Barry Schwartz and the infographics here that were supplied. So basically, this is the volatility that happens with different businesses and things like that during these updates. So we can see that a lot of volatility or changes happen when these updates are released. So we can see there's a March core update here that had a big volatility. Then there's a June core update as well, which was massive. And then there was even like an August, and then a Thanksgiving update, of course, right on the holidays when you're trying to relax. And then why would you be able to relax at Christmas, right? So then there was a December core update as well, which was one of the biggest updates in a long time. Notes Glenn gave as well. So that is a huge deal. And just seeing this information right here kind of puts it in perspective how kind of turbulent everything is and people trying to recover from these updates. A lot of changes obviously happening with spam and AI, and Google always trying to combat that. And then they release an update, then they have to release an update for the update, as usual in this vibe coding world. Not quite as bad as Microsoft with their Windows updates, but I digress. So there actually have been new updates as well, or just chatter as they call it, meaning that there's volatility again happening right now. And this is a late January of 2026. So they're pretty almost every month, it seems, they're releasing some type of new update. So I just kind of wanted to post that and kind of talk about that a little bit. Now, diving into the DOJ case. So the DOJ case with Google, this is complicated, and I'm not a lawyer, so I don't quite understand all of it, but I'm going to kind of cover it from a little bit of an SEO perspective and kind of my insights. So Google has been doing this antitrust case with the DOJ for quite some time. We've been covering it in various aspects, and it's quite interesting because obviously it's one of the biggest antitrust cases in decades, since Microsoft essentially in the early 2000s. And this did, in essence, Google got everything they wanted. Mostly. They really dodged multiple bullets at this point from the DOJ, and they really did exceptionally well. There was even a famous dinner where President Trump had all of the leaders of, big tech and said congrats to, the leader of leader of Google, saying, you really did well at this DOJ case. Congratulations. So that kind of sheds light on the situation right now, which is Google had dodged a bullet in many cases, and it was necessarily like not a big win per se, but it wasn't that they lost a lot either. And in this case, there was a lot of things going on. For the most part, there's mainly appeals happening right now for just kind of some, I'd say, sort of minor things where the kind of reaction from the courts were that they were ordered to give information to competitors so as not to be an illegal monopoly. This is from Search Engine Journal, and Google doesn't want to do that. So they're appealing, and they're like, they actually have, in my opinion, a good case, which is basically like user data is important to Google's glue system, as they're saying. Without, with sharing that information, basically spammers could use it to kind of find or reverse engineer the Google algorithm in some ways. And that would be very bad, because if you have spammers that are ranking at the top of all these pages, that really is a detriment to Google and to small businesses out there too. So from an SEO perspective, I actually agree with that. I actually think that makes sense, that they probably shouldn't release all that, because that is, proprietary important data for them and everything. And so I kind of get it. They were also saying that if you do release that data, there is a chance that a system could actually use it to for an LLM, to train an LLM and reverse engineer its ranking systems, and actually either create something or kind of circumvent some of Google's signals. So it's kind of dangerous in some ways. So I do kind of understand that, and I actually agree with Google in some ways for that argument. But right now it looks like they're toward the end of this long and winding road for the case. Now there is also an ad tech case, which is a separate kind of case that Judge Brinkema ruled that Google had formed an illegal monopoly in the ad tech stack and the tools and publishers that advertisers use to sell ads, and that the court found Google manipulated auctions and stifled competition. That's a very big deal, but the punishments were not that severe. So remedy hearings were contentious in late 2025. The search case avoided a breakup. It avoided selling Chrome as well, and it avoided at the moment selling any type of ad platform or anything. So there were some issues in general with that case, such as the conflict of interest of owning the buyer and the seller and the exchange tools. Like, being all of those things is kind of it's harder to justify that they were not a monopoly, when they're selling the ad tech and then also like making the bids and controlling all of it. That does kind of seem like a problem, which we all knew, but there wasn't really much loss. They were labeled as monopolistic, which opens up future court cases for Google in the next decade. But they avoided breaking up of Chrome and Android in the search case, and Google kept the crown jewels, or the top, things they needed, intact. And the stock market reacted favorably to the news in late 2025, as investors did fear prior if there would be some breakup, but now not the case. And now they've just moved on to AI and how Google's doing well with AI. So again, happy to just go over that, the latest things. There will be amendments that they're kind of going over now to kind of, you know, squash these remedies. Makes sense. But overall, Google, they kind of made out pretty well with this whole DOJ thing. Whether you like that or not, that's how it happened. The last thing I wanted to kind of cover here in terms of news is the TikTok and the US deal that have finally closes after years of regulatory uncertainty per Search Engine Journal. So a White House official said the US and China finalized a deal for TikTok's US operations to transfer to a consortium led by Oracle and Silverlake. Now, Oracle, we obviously know, have ties to the Trump administration. Silverlake is, I believe, the venture capital firm that is part of Oracle, I think, to kind of, you know, basically own the company in the United States. ByteDance retains just under 20% of the US business. Now, this will be a US business, so servers should be in the US that kind of own this, and that's where Oracle will kind of take over that, with a 7-member majority American board overseeing data protection and content moderation. I've heard it's extremely closed door to get into this investment or to even do anything that way. So you definitely have to be in the gang, so to speak, to be a part of that. The closing comes ahead of the January 23rd deadline created by the 120-day enforcement pause in Trump's September executive order. So just kind of interesting there for sure. And the US spinoff to Oracle and Silverlake had closed after a White House official said the US and China had finalized the deal. So they both had worked on that for a while, and obviously they wanted to have that stuff, you know, finalized essentially. Side note, can we not have AI ads ever? Because these are terrible and disgusting and weird. Yeah, let's do better. I just hate AI slop so much. And as an advertisement company, I hate using it, and I don't really like it when, you know, I kind of get spoon fed it by either people or people I, you know or whatever. So I try not to do that, and it's pretty disgusting. So I just didn't want to see that. Anyways, rant over. So the multi-tiered structure for the investment ownership of ByteDance retaining 20% of the Chinese company, Oracle, Silverlake, and MGX, an Abu Dhabi-based AI investment firm, each hold 15% stakes. Other investors include Susquehanna, Dragoneer, and Michael Dell's family office. Michael Dell recently donated billions of dollars to the Trump administration, so not surprised he's in on this deal. Also, Jared Kushner's firm, who Jared Kushner is the son-in-law of Donald Trump, is negotiating the deal, so he's also in on it, and it's going to be a nice big sum of money for him, that they're going to get a lot of money from this. So yeah, pretty interesting there. JD Vance said in September that the deal would value TikTok's US operations at roughly 14 billion, though the final amount ByteDance received remains unclear. So kind of closed door. We don't know all the numbers, but it's going to be a lot of money that using kind of the government to do all that. Yeah. So this was a really cool story about branded AI agents, again from Glenn Gabe on Blue Sky, and it looks really neat because it actually focuses on these AI shopping agents. And if you're like looking at Lowe's products, so hardware store in the United States, basically you can see like here's a house filter for your home, and it allows you to kind of say, you know, would you like to know more about these filters? And then you can shop now. You can even ask a question, which is cool. So it kind of says, find more information. Do you like any of these options? And it's trying to engage more in that selling process to, like, you know, see if you like it or not. You can obviously say plus or thumbs up or down if you do or don't like it. And then that kind of influences if Google uses it or not in the future. There's even an option for an audio overview. which is that's fine, whatever, but it's just a thing. And then you can chat. So now these are independent AI agents that are specific only for certain companies that have them right now. So I don't think it's like mass rolled out, and it is very specialized. I know when Google reached out to me for like some AI agent stuff, yeah, I think they were probably wanting like 50 to 100,000 per month. So it's pretty expensive to do that. It might even be more than that, I don't know, but just interesting story. All right, the first topic is YouTube is no longer optional for SEO in the age of AI overviews. This is an article from Search Engine Land, and it basically states how important right now YouTube is for small businesses or anybody that's trying to do content online. And it's saying how YouTube is now a core search infrastructure. This was also noted by Glenn Gabe as well. We had some conversations as well with Glenn Gabe, who said that X is surging in discover visibility. So there's some connections between social platforms actually getting indexed or seen on Google right now, as well as YouTube. And it says, but dropped in search visibility with the December broad core update. We'll get into core updates real soon in this video. But it still has a massive amount of visibility overall, but dipped. X and YouTube in particular are all over Discover right now. Way too much in my opinion. So some interesting insights there from Glenn Gabe that he shared with us directly. But just noting at this, YouTube is the second most visited website in the world. That is obviously massive behind Google, even way more so than ChatGPT or any other Perplexity, anything else. So that is something to note, drawing roughly 48 billion visits per month behind Google itself. It is massive. So definitely can't ignore that. This is 5.4 times more visits than Facebook gets, and 8.7 times more visits than ChatGPT. That's just for YouTube. So YouTube is quite massive and definitely something you want to have in your marketing strategy, I guess you could say, and a social strategy. So in just 2 decades, YouTube has gone from grainy videos to now popular feature length films, and evolution have changed how they watch. TV screens now surpass mobile primary device for viewing. So Nielsen data shows YouTube has been #1 in stream watch time in the US for 2 years. That is obviously massive. And right now what we're seeing again is this kind of push where we're having different visibility happening in these different channels on Google, and that's pulling from YouTube. So YouTube is a fantastic strategy. The article also notes that viewers are watching over 1 billion hours of YouTube content on TVs every day, and that viewing now includes shorts, podcasts, and live streams. From our own kind of anecdotal evidence, we've seen up to 10 times more views on shorts than traditional videos. So that's obviously a big deal. The algorithm is clearly pushing that for a lot of people. A lot of people watch and consume shorts. They're shorter, easier to digest, and they just basically play on. And it's kind of a, I'd say, a little different experience than like pausing and fast forwarding whatever than the YouTube embed, so to speak. So shorts are definitely a way to just consume that content, but very interesting in general there. So YouTube dominates the AI search. Again, up to 30%, near 30% of Google AI overviews cite YouTube. That is pretty massive. So we definitely incorporate YouTube and shorts and all that stuff, but this gives YouTube a 200 times advantage over its nearest direct competitor, Vimeo. Vimeo has had its own problems. They were bought by a venture capital firm, and there have been a lot of people on YouTube and other places that have said that it's kind of going downhill, unfortunately. So kind of a bummer there. We love to see competition, but obviously you can't argue with YouTube. So AI platforms like Perplexity and ChatGPT overwhelmingly cite YouTube, despite having no apparent incentive to do so. So kind of interesting there. With transcriptions, Gemini can obviously do that too very well. So that's something to note as well. At Kow Abundant, we've definitely been kind of driving this narrative as well, that SEO and search is driven by signals a lot more than kind of traditional just SEO techniques in some ways. So the algorithm has changed. It's been more descriptive or narrow scope toward these kind of buckets of users, and kind of showing like the right sect of what people like, and kind of, reinforcing those views of what they see. And so with YouTube, how to do that means to have a couple of key SEO items on your YouTube videos themselves. That includes metadata, structure, good descriptions, great titles that like people might search or look up for one that kind of answer questions as well. And then obviously the video content itself to really drive that narrative. And it's less about like clever tags and more about making each asset rich and credible for both humans and machines, it says in the article as well. So I think in this article, it's pretty well written in how it kind of summarizes the intent-driven metadata for videos. So if you have a video, have something like, it says not to say specifically like spring 2025 platform update, and instead focus more on actual like intent of a user. So this says how to cut cloud storage costs 30% without sacrificing performance. So you're really asking in the video and even in that description and title, who is the video for? What's the problem this video will solve? And which key concepts it covers. So very cool there. And that's kind of how to restructure maybe you're thinking of SEO and how to optimize videos. This is a really good point as well. It's basically saying to treat shorts in general as kind of a broader marketing strategy that is sort of like a teaser for maybe a entire video like you're watching right now. We're going to do some shorts on these videos that will go on different social channels and kind of tease like the longer form video. And that's a really good strategy to take, you know, small bits from those videos and then use them as shorts. It kind of makes users interested, like, well, what's the full video got? Another kind of quick handy tip is obviously to try to use chapters. So you can actually write in your videos, you can actually create chapters for different videos, and chapters kind of look like this, where they basically have a timestamp and then information on the like next to the timestamp. And then that will actually show up in a YouTube video when people kind of, you know, scroll on each side, they can actually see the section of every chapter, and they can even segment. So they can just skip around to different pieces in the video, and it's just really helpful as well for Google to kind of organize your video. Another note this briefly touches on, but I would kind of expand on it, is not to overly rely on AI captions or auto captions because they can make mistakes. So just to be aware of that, and to edit your captions if you're using like some program that maybe creates shorts for you or things like that. Always double check your captions, because sometimes they can lead to some catastrophic results, as we have had for some clients. Luckily we caught most of them, but they're always like did you mean to say that thing? So you got to be careful with captions for sure. All right, thanks everyone for watching. That was the news update from Kow Abundant, and yeah, hope you're staying safe, hope you're staying happy out there and all that good stuff. Best of luck. Like and subscribe, really helps out the channel. We appreciate it a ton. And yeah, comment on these news articles. There's a lot to chew on. Let me know your thoughts. If you have any particular thoughts with you know, the administration or how things are kind of being handled in terms of, you know, deals that are happening, from the Google Antitrust to the TikTok deal to so many things that we covered, AI, OpenAI and beyond. I'd love to hear your thoughts. So thanks everybody for watching. See ya.